George Lynch. 2 seconds, 1 second. Kobe pump fake. Kobe for the win. Kobe Bryant.
1-2. He loops that to left field. Going to be a tough play. Jeter on the run, makes the play. Wow. And flies into the stands. Oh, what a play by Derek Jeter.
Roethlisberger has time. Throws to the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Holmes.
This is the Personal Foul Podcast. I am your host, Colton Gesser. We have an exciting show on deck for you this week with special guest Bryan Oringher, who's a former NBA scout, and he is the host of the Scout with Bryan podcast. Thanks for coming on, Bryan.
No problem. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff. I know you. I believe you're on my buddy's podcast a while back. My buddy Alex Cuesta, I believe you're on his a while back. So I thought I'd, it's getting into the hoops time. It's starting to come in full swing with the NFL finishing up this weekend with the Bucks winning the Super Bowl, which I, was all on that Tom Brady wagon there, called that one. But now we're on to where I'm pretty excited for. I'm a Laker fan, ready to get into the NBA season here in full swing. You were a former scout for the Wizards, Hawks, Wizards, and the Raptors, excuse me. So what was it like being a scout, and what was it like traveling with the team? Now you traveled with the Wizards for quite a bit there. What was it like being in that mix there?
It was an awesome experience. I grew up a Wizards fan in the Gilbert Arenas years, and was going nuts like every fan was when he was scoring 50 every night. And, after working for Gary Williams in Maryland for a couple of years in college, I actually got to intern for the Wizards my last couple of years of school. And then right out of school became full-time with them as the head video coordinator. So, yeah, like you said, spent 4 years traveling with the team. I worked for Randy Whitman and Scott Brooks. I was in every single coaches meeting, every locker room, film session. I tell people it was like getting an NBA in basketball. You're just living and breathing the X's and O's every single day, all the terminology, all the scouting reports, all the tendencies. So it was a great experience to be really involved with them. And then, did the regional advanced scouting, like you said, for one season for the Hawks and Raptors. And, that was a unique, awesome experience as well. And overall, yeah, it was almost 10 years, working at high levels of basketball, and, just learned an incredible amount about the game that obviously I love and so many people love.
Absolutely. Can't wait to pick your brain a little bit here and talk a little bit of basketball with you here. So, yeah, going on to a team that used to cover the Washington Wizards, blockbuster trade in the offseason, kind of a weird trade personally. I kind of thought it was really weird to see John Wall and Russell Westbrook go to flip-flop there. They bring in Russ, that experiment, a lot of mixed feelings, people on it. You kind of know what you're getting from Russ. And you got Bradley Beal there, who is all in on the Wizards. I'm surprised you don't see many superstars that are going to stick with the team and figure it out, trying to win there instead of, all right, this is bad. They're really bad. They got a lot of young players, got Russ there. What are your thoughts on the Wizards this season? I know Bradley Beal has been absolutely amazing this season for the Wizards.
Yeah, he's an incredible player, and like you said, unbelievably loyal guy, and it's unfortunate, because I think he's even starting to hear some of the noise, and it's like you play somewhere and want to stay there and want to make it work there, and people crush you for not being good enough and start hating on your game, but then the moment you ask for a trade or try to go somewhere else, then you're accused of ring chasing and just trying to be on a super team. So it's kind of like you can't really win either way. I mean, he's definitely done everything basically that he can there. It's been a disappointing season overall. Luckily for them, obviously there's plenty of time left, and also having the play-in tournament this year, the top 10 teams all having a chance to be in the playoffs benefits them, because they're definitely still in the running, for those spots. So, yeah, I mean, the onus, I think, is on Brooks. I don't think, he's in the last year of his contract. Definitely right now hasn't justified getting any more time there. And obviously they, made a move kind of in his favor to get Russ, a guy that he had a tremendous amount of comfort with. And like you said, it's been a mixed bag so far, but they definitely need to turn it around. And, now they're basically healthy again. And, there's no more excuses at this point.
Yeah, he had that time with Russ and OKC with the Thunder. Yeah, they got some young talent there. Rory looks really good when he's healthy. He had COVID this season. The team, I think, overall is on the way up. Do you think it was the right move trading away John Wall? I know the contract was a big problem. Not saying Russ's is any better. Would you have liked to seen Beal and Wall run it back again?
I would have definitely liked to see it, at least from a selfish perspective. Being around the two of them and working with them for so long, it's tough. I never thought I would see John and Brad playing on different teams and going against each other. But I think a lot of it was John kind of wore out his welcome in DC a little bit. He had that gang sign video in the off season, which was not a good look for him, and something that I know ownership wasn't happy about at all. And but Russ kind of wanted to change the scenery, not being happy with the Houston ownership and what was going on with Harden and all those things. So, in the end, it's kind of worked out for both guys. I mean, John's getting to be the franchise guy again. He didn't really want to play second fiddle to Brad, and is kind of the new face in Houston and is playing really well. And I think Russ obviously loves playing with Brad, and the two of them are super competitive and want to make it work. The only thing missing right now is the wins to show for it. But I understood. I did think it was kind of a little bit of a rare win-win for both teams, but definitely hard to see John Wall not a Wizard anymore.
Yeah, when I think of John Wall, I just think of him as a Wizard. It's really weird seeing him in the Houston red and the blue throwbacks, little city jerseys, are as nice as they are. I'm used to seeing John as a Wizard. So going on to the champs, the Los Angeles Lakers. Interesting offseason, getting Dennis Schroeder in a trade, trading away Danny Green. Dwight Howard leaves in free agency, goes to Philly. JaVale McGee goes to Cleveland. Lose a lot of their guys that were kind of those gritty guys, played hard from Rondo, goes to Atlanta. Those gritty guys that kind of made some plays in the postseason. Saw playoff Rondo again, back at it. Dwight Howard getting into pretty much the head of Nikola Jokic in Denver in that series. So do you think with the moves in the offseason, bringing in Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, who had a great impact on the game last night for the Lakers, you think bringing in those guys, again, it's a lot of offense, and they got a little bit younger bringing in Montrez and Dennis. You think this team is bound to repeat again? They kind of have those moments where it's like, geez, Anthony Davis doesn't look 100% right now. He's clearly hurt. He missed the game last night. The free throws is a problem. I don't know. We get into that with you within a minute here. What do you think about the Lakers repeating this season? They have a shot?
Yeah, I think they to me, I think the Lakers and Clippers are the two best teams in the league this year, and I think ideally they meet in the Western Conference Finals and duke it out. And to me, that's kind of the real championship, like everybody sort of thought it would be last year. And obviously the Clippers fell a little short, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Lakers. I think losing Rondo is gonna be a big deal. I mean, Schroeder I think is better for a 72-game season, and over the course of a long year, obviously can give you a little bit more with his age and just the ability to play more minutes and all that. But once you get to the playoffs, there are a few guys that are smarter and better at just leading a team and throwing those lob passes and being in the right spots defensively than Rondo. And yeah, I mean, Dwight provided an edge for them too. Danny Green, I know his shot was missing usually in the playoffs, but at least, for the most part, he's a solid 3-and-D guy, definitely a good defender. So yeah, there's some question marks. I don't mind the way Pelinka replaced anybody. I love Harrell personally. But yeah, I think it's a pretty similar team. Obviously, whenever you have LeBron and AD, you're a threat to win a championship, and the narrative's going to be all about ultimately how guys play in the playoffs, and it's a make-miss league at the end of the day. So they'll need KCP and Tucker and all those guys to step up and hit shots in the playoffs. And again, I think, to me personally, it's a coin toss right now between them and the Clippers.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty much what the narrative was last season. Going into a little bit more with the Lakers here, Anthony Davis, he's had his games where he looks really good, and it kind of seems like he's still, he was kind of a rest guy. He needed his rest. Kind of reminds me of a Paul George or a Kawhi needing their nights off. Anthony Davis kind of looks off. Again, short off season, weird time in the bubble, playing for, pretty much every night, not having a day off kind of thing, and just being basketball 24/7 there in the bubble. Anthony Davis right now struggling at the free throw line, where the guy's been probably one of the best bigs to shoot free throws over his time in the league. As a scout, is there anything you're seeing from Anthony Davis right now from the free throw line with his struggles? He's down like 73%. That is like unheard of for Anthony Davis. He's up in the 80s, 85, up in that range usually. Anything you're seeing from his side? You think it's just he's tired and, has to get his legs under him again after, a short off season?
Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, I try to hop around the whole league pretty equally in terms of like how much I watch each team, and I didn't even know that AD was struggling really from the free throw line until you said that. So no, I mean, ultimately, I'm not worried. I wouldn't be worried about Anthony Davis. I mean, like you said, it's such a quick turnaround. You see, Miami goes from being in the finals to maybe not even being a playoff team this year based on how much wear and tear they had and the way they've had to load manage their guys back from such a deep run. So yeah, I mean that turnaround I think was really unfair, particularly to the two teams in the finals. And you're seeing certainly a little bit of wear and tear on some of the Lakers at times, but progression to the mean or whatever is going to happen. And at the end of the season, I'd be shocked if his percentage isn't up back there, kind of around used to normal. And certainly in the playoffs, he's a guy that's been there and done that and has the confidence of last year's incredible playoffs to fall back on. That I wouldn't worry about him or Bron much in the playoffs at all.
Going into the rest of the Western Conference, there's a few teams here that kind of surprised me so far. Denver being at the 8th seed. If you were to ask a lot of people, that's probably not where you would expect them after the bubble. Jamal Murray played fantastic in the bubble, probably one of the best players in there, him and Devin Booker. What are your really thoughts on the Western Conference right now? You have Dallas on the bottom, the Pelicans on the bottom. Memphis was banged up early, so I expect them to kind of creep back up towards the top. Golden State hanging around there, kind of blew that game last night to the Spurs. What are your kind of thoughts right now on the bottom half of the Western Conference so far?
Yeah, I'm not really shocked by any of it. I agree Denver's probably the one that's the most surprising to me, but kind of like I said with the Lakers, I mean, they were right there, grinded out a tremendous amount of games, 3-4 months before the season started, going really deep in the playoffs. And yeah, Jamal Murray looked like he was, had made a leap really to superstar. And, he's come back in a few months and not really been that exact same guy and been a little banged up. And, Jokic is unreal. I still think obviously that they'll make a playoffs and at least, they'll be in the top 10 enough where they'll give themselves a chance. But, I think ultimately I did think they would be at the top 4 seed this season. I'm not surprised to see Utah still up around the top. I think Quinn Snyder's maybe the best coach in the whole league. Not surprised to see Phoenix in the top 4. Getting CP was so huge for them. The Spurs, they took one season off, but they're always a well-oiled machine under Pop, and he's done such an incredible job there. And they have an interesting mix of some great vets and some really impressive young players. So no, I mean I'm not shocked that Golden State's hanging around, that Houston's hanging around. I thought Dallas would be kind of in that mix for like the 8th seed, so I'm not totally surprised that they're struggling a little bit. Sacramento's another team that has surprised me, though. I thought they would probably be, outside that top 10, maybe in that 11-12 spot, and the fact that they're a game over 500 and right up there with Denver right now is a good credit certainly to how De'Aaron Fox is playing and Luke Walton kind of changing things around, and definitely Tyrese Halliburton being probably the steal of the draft at number 12.
Yeah, Halliburton looks really good so far at Iowa State, correct, I believe?
Yep.
Yeah, he looks fantastic. A little bit before we go out to your stomping grounds in the East, before we go on, the Pelicans, man, what are your thoughts on the Pelicans? I kind of keep expecting them to be really good, taking that jump where they're kind of, again, not a top 4 seed, but like 6 to 8, 9 kind of thing. I feel like they just keep continuing to like struggle. Lonzo Ball is like, he has his moments like he did with the Lakers where he looked really good. Then he has moments where it's like, it's just cruise control and he's pretty much not around. Brandon Ingram, still really good there. Zion, of course, what you're getting from him. What do you think they're missing there in New Orleans? Is it the right head coach? Like, what do you think is the problem there in NOLA? I love the trade for Anthony Davis. They got a bunch back in it. Zion clearly comes in the lottery. What do you think is missing with the Pelicans? Because I feel like, honestly, with the roster, Eric Bledsoe comes in and trade with a flip for Drew Holiday. What do you think the Pelicans are missing? Because I just keep expecting more out of the Pelicans.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I actually, before the season started, I had both them and the Spurs down to win I think 25, 26 games. So I was pretty down, honestly, on both of them. And obviously I was wrong about the Spurs. They've really put it together. And the Pelicans, haven't been great. They've kind of been, a little bit better, I guess, than even I expected. But I think their issue is guard play, really. I think Lonzo just is who he is at this point. He's maybe a solid backup point guard. I don't think he has really what it takes to be a consistent, every night starter at that position on a good team. Shooting guard, they have JJ, obviously, who's a solid vet and can help a lot of teams, but, he's not capable really of playing starter minutes and being a huge piece anymore. And, Ingram's a great scorer, but he's still got a lot of issues defensively. Zion's, puts up crazy stats and is a freak, but he's still, they have to find out the right way to utilize him in the NBA game because it's an awkward fit. He's kind of a 4-man who can't shoot and who turns the ball over a decent amount and can't really guard any of those perimeter 4s off the dribble. So I think they really have to upgrade the guards first and foremost. I think they need to decide ultimately, are they going to try to play Zion as a small 5 or maybe get a 5-man that can shoot and fits him a little bit better than Steven Adams does. But I think they're still, a year or two away from really being a solid playoff team because they definitely need a few more pieces to really contend.
From the Wild West to the interesting East here from me. When you look at the standings here, it's really interesting to see. You got the Hornets at 6. Who would have thought that? Gordon Hayward, everyone thought that was a disaster, him going there. He's having career numbers there. LaMelo Ball looks to be the best ball, kicking Lonzo to the curb. LaMelo looks fantastic there. Toronto figuring it out again. They looked really, early on in the season. They're starting to figure it out. They're the 8th seed right now. Atlanta showed a lot of spark early, starting to settle down to kind of where I bet a lot of people kind of thought, we'll hear what your thoughts are on that. Pacers, again, they're always there. Indiana's always in the mix. Kind of reminds me of Gasol and Randolph's Grizzlies. They were always there. That team was always, 5, 6, 4. Indiana at 5. Boston 4. The Brooklyn Nets, 3. Interesting. We'll get into that here. Milwaukee 2. Philly 1. What are your surprises here so far in the Eastern Conference?
To be honest, the team I'm most surprised by is Cleveland just being even at 10. I thought they would, maybe win 10 to 15 games all season, and they're already at 10 and 15. I think Bickerstaff's done a really impressive job with them. Drummond's actually been pretty good. Obviously, Sexton's been a lot of fun, and the fact that they look like at least they could hang in playoff contention or hang in again for that play-in game. Is pretty impressive for them. But yeah, I'm definitely a little bit surprised that Toronto's sitting at 8 right now, that Miami's sitting at 12. Those are teams that, if you told me that would be the Eastern Conference Finals before the season, I could have bought that. But I think Doc's done a great job with Philly. I'm not shocked that Indiana's still right there because, like you said, they're just a well-oiled machine. Sabonis and Brogdon are so good. Brooklyn, obviously, with the big 3 now, it'd be a massive disappointment if they're anywhere lower than 3, really. Milwaukee is always by the top, but obviously they're going to be judged on the playoffs this season. And, Charlotte, I thought Borrego, should have been in the running really for Coach of the Year last year because they were playing really good basketball before the bubble and kind of were like this year's Cleveland. They'd won a lot more games than I think a lot of people expected them to, and they've kind of come right out where they left off, and Rozier's even been good. He's never going to justify that huge amount of money they gave him, but he's a damn good player. Hayward, same thing. Maybe might not be worth the max in a few years, but he's unbelievably talented, and LaMelo, like you said, he was the top player on my board, and he's been as great as I think anybody expected him to possibly be. So not really shocked by any of the teams in there right now. Just a little bit shocked. Obviously, the Miami's on the outside looking in, and curious who they can possibly knock out. If they're going to end up being in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, really interesting to see how Miami bounces back here. Going off the rookies, like you're just kind of naming, we're named Tyrese Halliburton before. You just talked about LaMelo. This kind of class was kind of expected to do nothing. This was kind of I don't know who's going first. These guys kind of all look like they're, if this is go back a few years with some of these other classes they've had, probably these guys, most of them are going 5, 6, 7, 8, not any lottery guys. Well, technically that is a lottery, but not any top 3 guys where it's like, this is much watch, got to get them. They've kind of showed out still. LaMelo looks fantastic. Great game last night, almost a triple-double, 24 points. Tyrese Halliburton looks great. Wiseman, when he's healthy, he's out for a week, I believe, with his wrist, I believe. He looks great, and Golden State missed him last night. These rookies are starting to look really, really good. Okoro looks pretty decent there in Cleveland. What are your thoughts on the rookie class in general? Because, like I just said, this was kind of a class that you really didn't know. Anthony Edwards had his moments there in Minnesota so far. Anything that has surprised you out of these guys? I know you said Halliburton has kind of been your steal of the draft so far.
Yeah, it's I was super high on him. I think my ultimate top 3 were LaMelo, Wiseman, and I think I had Halliburton third, actually. So not shocked by, any of those 3 really. Wiseman, I think, has the capability of being kind of a more athletic a more offensive-minded Gobert type, the way he impacts the game. Patrick Williams has been a surprise to me. I was obviously a little surprised when Chicago took him 4th. He was super raw, didn't have a ton to go off of from Florida State, but he's super talented, and you can just, you can see his special ability and why they thought so highly of him. Okoro looked incredible in the preseason. He's been up and down in the season, but him, Devin Vassell, there's a few of those wing types. Denny with the Wizards has been pretty solid. So yeah, I don't get too caught up in, first of all, it's too early, obviously, to even think about judging a whole class, and anybody that's claiming to know that a class is terrible or whatever before the draft happens is usually lying to you. It's impossible to know then. I think, watching all these guys, you can just see there's a ton of talent there. There's a ton of guys with really high upside, and ultimately we'll see who can really blossom into a superstar. But I think like those wings, for example, Williams, Okoro, and Vassell, I think they all have all-star potential. So that's 3 wings in the top 11 that all could end up being really, really good players in the NBA to go along with, obviously, Edwards, Wiseman, LaMelo, Halliburton, all those guys. It's going to be a perfectly fine draft class when it's said and done. And I think there's you look even further like Maxey and Maladon and Cole Anthony and some of the guys lower down. There's definitely a lot of good players. The teams are pretty happy with how they did in this year's draft.
For sure, Peyton Pritchard even has some sparks there in Boston. Going on to the Brooklyn Nets here, probably the most interesting team in the Eastern Conference. Clearly the big 3. First time we've seen that in a little bit here, a few years, having a big 3. What are your thoughts on Brooklyn? There's a lot of personality there, and I mean a lot of personality, from Harden to Durant to Kyrie. You think this works out in a championship here in the future? I mean, that's kind of where all their chips are in. Young head coach and Steve Nash. How do you think he can handle the personalities there in Brooklyn?
I think I think he's kind of the biggest question mark or weakness sort of right now. not just a first-time head coach, but really a first-time coach at all. He was, at best, like occasional, very part-time kind of, consultant for the Warriors, and to make that leap to head coach was kind of a crazy leap. And then to obviously jump right into managing, like you said, this very eccentric group of guys that, are the most talented three, big three in the NBA, but definitely the biggest question mark in that Kyrie could decide in 2 weeks that he's done playing basketball and wants to go travel the world and, be Mother Teresa or whatever he ends up doing. But, I think on paper, obviously, Durant's a champion. Harden is, one of the most skilled players in the league and also an underrated defender. The knock on him on that end was more fair like 5 years ago. It's not that fair anymore. And also people call him selfish or a ball hog. He's, I think, leading the league in assists again this season. He's a tremendous passer as you're seeing the way he plays on this Brooklyn team again. And, like I said, Kyrie is the question mark, but, you watch him play the Clippers, I think, last week, and, he gives them nearly 40 and played probably the best defensive game I've ever seen Kyrie play. So when he's locked in, obviously he's unbelievable. So they definitely have enough talent. They, to me, I think have a great chance to come out of the East. But, like Yogi Berra said, 90% of the game is half mental, and we'll see how they can manage those egos and if Nash is up to the task.
Do you think the 76ers are legit under Doc Rivers? From Brett Brown, everyone hammering Brett as being the problem. You think Doc Rivers is the right guy in charge there and is going to lead them? And to be fair, Brett Brown was given a bad roster last season. The fact that they brought in Al Horford was an awful thing. And I could have told you that as an outsider, that I'm not a huge Sixer fan. I watch games because I'm in that kind of area for basketball. So I do watch the 76ers. But you're kidding me. I could have told you that wasn't going to work. Friggin' no shooters around Ben Simmons. Joel can shoot the three, but not well. That was just awful floor spacing with those three on the floor. Now they brought in Danny Green. Maxey looks really good. They have more shooters around him now with Ben and Joel having like an MVP season. My goodness. You think the Sixers are legit?
I think it's definitely a much better roster, a roster that fits Ben a whole lot better. Like you said, having Danny Green, having Seth Curry to space the floor has been huge for him. I think Doc is obviously a great leadership guy. His whole Ubuntu thing and just guys clearly like playing for him, and I think he's definitely a good coach and the right guy for this kind of Sixers team to have. But the knock against Doc has been the playoff performance, and blowing that 3-1 lead again was unacceptable, and why he lost his job. So do they have enough to get over the top in the playoffs with Simmons, who still can't shoot? Probably not. I think they definitely need a lot of breaks to go their way. They need a lot of guys to play perfect basketball. But again, I do think having been surrounded now by 3 to 4 shooters whenever he's on the court. Daryl Morey's done a really good job with that. I think Maxey's, a really good pick, like we said. Shake Milton's made a big leap and is in that kind of most improved player running. And it's a roster that makes a lot more sense. But ultimately, you have to be a really perfect team to win in the playoffs. And as much as I love Ben Simmons and think people don't appreciate enough, how many other things he does incredibly well, despite not shooting the ball well, it's still, it's going to be hard to hide his total lack of anything outside of 2 feet in the playoffs. The same way it's hard for, Utah to get over the hump with somebody like Gobert. In the playoffs, you really need guys that can make shots pretty much all over the court. If you don't have that, I don't know. I could see them again maybe get in the conference finals, but I have a hard time buying them as kind of a championship type team.
Well, speaking of championships, before we wrap this podcast up, where do you see the end of the season going? Who do you got on both sides? I don't need a winner yet. I'll go back to you later on. We'll Definitely probably running back here as the NBA season gets towards the end. But early predictions, who do you got in the finals? Where do you think goes on here?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say most likely Brooklyn against, again, I said a coin toss between the LA teams. So I don't know. Maybe I'll switch it up and say the Clippers this year. But I really do think, obviously, the Lakers have a great chance of being right there. The East still will be a bloodbath. But if I had the gun to my head, I'd say Nets Clippers.
I can't disagree with that one. I would prefer my Lakers in it, but I'm not going to disagree with your expertise. Again, Bryan, thank you very much. You can check Bryan's podcast out. We're going to have him talk about that in a minute here, go into detail what his podcast is. Scout with Bryan. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you will find this. Bryan, tell us a little bit about your show.
Yeah, like you said, pretty much just if you type in Scout with Bryan and Bryan with a Y, anywhere you'll find my stuff, the podcast, Scout with Bryan on Twitter, and the YouTube channel. Those are my three main outlets where you'll find the Scout with Bryan's film breakdowns and all that good stuff.
You could check it out. I've checked out some of your breakdowns, seen it bounced around all over the place. Great knowledge that you have. I'm really glad we got to talk here. You can follow the Personal Foul Podcast on Twitter @foul_podcast. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out our past shows with Chris Wormley, NFL super agent Lee Steinberg, and much, much more on that. And again, this is a wrap for the Personal Foul Podcast.